Happy Sunday, it's time for a coffee chat. It is hair wash day, so I apologize because she is looking a little bit rough, but we are here for all the vibes today. This coffee is hitting so hard. We just did a plain oat milk latte, and sometimes that's just the best option. Per usual, this morning I took something in. I did not do a podcast today because it's Sunday, which means, you guys know, we went to church. And at church we're studying the book of Daniel, and I've talked to you guys a little bit about this, but we haven't gone really in depth. And every time we go through the book of Daniel, I'm reminded of how incredible Daniel's story is, but also how incredibly beautifully God works throughout all things. And I won't lie to you, it's been kind of an emotional weekend, okay? I'm a girl and I'm experiencing that one time a month where we're really reminded that we're girls. And so it's making me a bit emotional. But there's also just some extrinsic factors, as there always are in life, and today's message was like extremely pinpointed to me, and I honestly was on like the verge of tears all day, which makes me really excited to talk to you guys about it because it's kind of boring. If I'm not really like moved by something, I don't want to necessarily like share it with you guys and waste your time. But today we're feeling moved. Today we're feeling the feel, and so we're going to chat about it. Today's sermon was all about Daniel 10, so if you want to go read up on it before we dive in, absolutely please do. I highly recommend. And always remember, I am not a Bible scholar. I am just a girl, so always do your own research about what the Bible is saying. I just think talking to you guys about my experience, really this is just documentation, digital diary, if you will. But this morning we were talking about Daniel 10 and how beautiful it is in the way that God works and gives us very specific individualized moments. Specifically when we've been praying for something over and over and over and you just feel like, okay God, what the heck? And this is something that I feel like everybody deals with, but specifically when you're in a season where, my pastor described it really beautifully, you believe that God can. It's not a doubt thing. It's almost a frustration because you know that he can and he hasn't. And I feel like so often we get into this place when you've been praying for something for so long, you feel like, oh my gosh, like I don't want to doubt God. I'm not doubting God, like I believe he can. And you have to remind yourself of that, and it's genuinely not that you don't believe he can. It's that you know that he can. It's that you know that if he wanted to, he would, and he hasn't yet. And it's confusing to us because we don't fully understand everything that's going on, because God is God, which I'm so thankful to not understand. My brain would hurt all the time. But in those moments, it's frustrating when you're praying about something over and over and over and you're just waiting. But in the book of Daniel, chapter 10, he has this experience with God where he's prayed his whole life. Daniel's estimated to be between 80 and 90 years in Daniel chapter 10. For the release of his people from Babylon rule back to Judah, Jerusalem, and it happens. A new king conquers Babylon, and he decides to let the people of Judah and Jerusalem go and go back to their homeland, and they are no longer a captive in Babylon. But Daniel is deeply moved because the people of Judah and Jerusalem, because they've been in Babylon for so long, have adopted a lot of the sinful day-to-day life things that have been going on in Babylon and are continuing to sin against God. And so Daniel has been praying and fasting and praying and fasting for weeks at this point. And then we get this experience in Daniel chapter 10, which people are all over the map as to whether or not this is like what these visions mean in the Bible or how they were formed, but I think it's beautiful, and I don't think that's the important part. But Daniel experiences this vision, and it's explicitly stated that it's for Daniel only, that he's the only one there for the vision, that everyone else runs away. Maybe Daniel was freaking people out, and so that's why they left, or maybe it was that God knew in that moment he needed to be alone. But Daniel was the only one to experience this vision and this experience with an angel. And my pastor reminded us that sometimes God just has to look at you and only you. Sometimes the person in church is just sipping their coffee, having a beautiful Sunday morning, and you're over here on the verge of tears because you feel like God is singling you out in a message or in worship or just in a moment in general. And that speaks to life. And I think something he didn't really touch on, but it's so beautiful, is everything with God is so relational. He is literally the God of the freaking universe. Okay, people, let's remember that. God of the universe. And he decides that a relationship with each and every one of us in an individual way is important. How freaking cool is that? Like, we don't appreciate that enough. But anyways, so this moment is specifically for Daniel, and it talks about how Daniel was experiencing the presence of God in such an overwhelming way that he fell on his face. And I feel like we don't have a lot of those stories out and about anymore as people, but we experience Jesus in different moments, in very intimate moments, and we don't talk about it very often. But it's okay to like, I'm the worst because I oftentimes am just chalking it up to like, oh, I think I'm just being hormonal today and that's why, you know, church had me crying. No, like Jesus was pulling on my heartstrings, and that's okay. And that was definitely me this morning. And it was just an unbelievable experience to have that moment amidst talking about a moment like that. Very Matrix vibes, if you will. But how cool is it that God likes to have individual moments with us like that, and individual conversations. And in this moment with Daniel, he reminds Daniel twice that he's very precious to God. Hey, in case you didn't hear me the first time, you are very precious to God. Peace, be encouraged, be strong. And it wasn't that in this moment, everything that Daniel was praying for came to life immediately in a miracle way. But it was that God came to him in a moment and reminded him, you're precious to me. I love you. I see you. I've heard you since the first prayer, and it's been happening on your behalf. He talks about spiritual warfare in this section, which is a whole nother topic that's very deep and very intellectual. But he talks about how God has been working this entire time that Daniel's praying, and just because he didn't see it, he was proud of him for not giving up on this prayer, and then he continued in this prayer and encouraged him. Like, his final words to Daniel were encouragement and peace. And I think that's so beautiful, because oftentimes we're so wrapped up in our circumstances that we forget that there is so much more than what we can see, and that there is so much more to God's plan for us than we know. And so yeah, our little Sunday coffee chat today is really just a reminder to continue to pray over whatever you're praying for. Remember that just because it's taking a long time and you might be having feelings of frustration doesn't mean that you're doubting God. It means that you know that he can, and you're actually trusting him and believing him so strongly that it's frustrating, because you know that he can, and you know he has the power to do whatever you're praying for. Also remembering that there's so much going on that we can't see and understand, and it's perfect that way, because if we saw and understood everything, that would mean that we would have to be in control. And I don't know about you, but I'm a freaking hot mess, so I'm glad I'm not in control. I just want to finish with the same way that this section finished. Have peace, be encouraged, be strong. I love you so much. Happy Sunday, and I will see you in the next video. Cheers!